It as your learning friends now?
Yes, my Lord, Mr. Omtatah is a serial litigator and a public interest, a public defender in this country. And I respect him for that role, my Lord.
And now a senator? And now he's a senator?
Yeah, he's a senator for Busia County. He replaced the Attorney General, who did not run for office.
Members of the Honorable Court, in my submissions, I will rely on the petition we filed jointly with the three others. It's dated 22nd of August. I also have submissions which I filed alone, which are dated 26th of August. And I also have a further affidavit which is dated the 29th of August. My Lords, before I remark on the mathematics, I just wanted to make a small observation as regards point number 1. And I think the elephant in the room is point number 1. What kind of election does the Constitution of Kenya anticipate? That's a question that I've seen documents and videos by some members of the court telling me that even this court does not comprehend the kind of election anticipated under Article 81 and 86 of the Constitution. Short of a digital election, you cannot meet the constitutional threshold.
Mr. Omtatah, what
Yes.
did you say?
I said I've come across publications and video recordings by some members of the bench who complain that the 14 days the court is given to determine a dispute concerning the presidential election is too short. And I'm saying that statement demonstrates the failure of, with due respect, the honorable judges of this court to understand the electoral architecture in the Constitution of Kenya 2010. The Constitution of Kenya 2010 only anticipates a digital election. And if we are dealing with a digital election, 14 days is too much. But if you are dealing with a paper election, a manual election, you need maybe 2 months. That's where I wanted to begin. And this election does not meet the threshold in the Constitution at all. The presidential election that I'm referring to, that's before this court. It's not simple. That's why you have got spoiled ballots. In a digital election, you don't have spoiled ballots or rejected ballots. And you don't even have the question of whether the spoiled or rejected ballots count. It's not verifiable. Right now, I cannot verify where the ballots I cast went. I don't know. The moment I dropped them in that box, I lost all contact with those ballots. There's no mechanism of verifying. A digital election would give me a serial number by which I could track my ballots. So I'm saying that if you look at the threshold in the Constitution, we must work towards a digital election and move away from these paper elections, which allow human interference without sometimes leaving footprints. I would now go to my submissions. I was supposed to be given some aid. Yes, where the...
If the time could stop running, we had supplied the electronic instruments to the court.
You beg the assistant.
I don't understand what you said. I come there. Oh, open for me the PowerPoint document. Go to the next slide. Yes, we're looking at an analysis of paragraph 26 of affidavit filed by Mr. Sunkuli in petition number 7, paragraph 226. And you can see that he's giving us, he gives data of how the KIMS kits transmitted on 9th August at 17 hours at the close of polls. He gives that figure. On 9th August at 20:45 hours, about some 3 hours and 45 minutes, he gives his figure of 13 million. Then, most surprisingly, you have two entries. It is the entry that which gives us at 14 hours and 14:40 hours. The KIMS kits are transmitting some 23 hours later, still transmitting data. And we're saying that that data is not acceptable. So we come to the next slide. I'll just run through given the short time I have. When you got that slide, you look, they tell you at 20:45 hours, on 9th August 2022, some 13,731,215 people voted. Polling turnout recorded on 10th August is 14,239,862 ballots. And on the 10th, that is the day after the voting, and we know that it's only elders where elections were taking place. Now, when you analyze that data, you find that 508,647 ballots are added on the 10th. And you saw Land Council Willis show that the audit of the register had almost the same number of ghost voters. So you can see from that data that they present, Mr. Sunguli presents, you are able to isolate 508,647 ghost cast votes, which are more than the difference between the two leading candidates. If you go to the next slide, and if you look at the ballots that are recorded to have received, to have recorded on the next day, you are talking of some 1,665,412 curiously cast votes, which are coming out after the close of voting, and that's after 3 hours after the close of voting. So if we take the total tally now, you find that the tally is close to it's about 1.7 million votes. That spike in votes is not possible. That spike in votes is part of the problems we're having, that fellows were having access, the KIMS kits that were still transmitting data from locations that are not clear. Because the KIMS kits that were in polling stations, the voting stopped on 9th. And giving an allowance of 3 hours or 4 hours for people who are still on the queue, you would understand by why a KIMS kit would still be transmitting 23 hours after the close of elections is something that is difficult to comprehend. Also, my members of the Honorable Court, if you look at the Form 34C that has been published and interrogate the data there, if you look at the total of the variables ascribed to each candidate, the amount that you get is 110 votes less than the number that has been printed on that paper. Now, if you look at, that thing was boggling my mind. Initially, I thought it was a simple error of addition. But it has come out it was not a question of 1 + 1 = 3. Because when you look at paragraph 32 of the replying affidavit of Mr. Sunkuli, yes, I'm on, yes, go to the next slide. Next. Yes, sorry, I forgot to, thank you for directing me. If you look at paragraph 32 of the replying affidavit of Mr. Sunkuli, the total voter turnout in the table when you subtract from it, as given in the table, the number of rejected votes on Form 34, you get exactly that figure of 14,213,137, which in that replying affidavit they claim was an error of addition. But if you interrogate the raw data, you find that that figure is the valid figure. So the votes attributed to the candidates are fictitious. From paragraph 32 of Mr. Sunkuli's replying affidavit. So, when you go on to the next slide. I've reproduced I've tried to factor in the figure that Mr. Sunkuli gives, and when you add them, you get the 14,213,137. Yet, when you add the figures attributed to the individual candidates on Form 34C, they come to 14,213,027. That is not an innocent mistake. It is a situation whereby somebody has left a trail that they were working backwards from a certain figure which they had, and they were working backwards, and so they would going to get that. And most important, I would also refer to the affidavit signed by the chairman, filed by the chairman in petition number 5. At paragraph 95 of his replying affidavit, shown on 26 August 2022, the chairman presents the exact figure of 14,213,137 as the total valid votes cast for all the 4 candidates. So if that is the figure that's coming from the raw data, that's the figure that's carried in the affidavit, then the values attributed to each one of the 4 candidates are fictitious and cannot count. And therefore, that Form 34C is an invalid document. Go to the next slide. Sorry, next. Yes, so in that slide I'm saying, we can only conclude that these figures, which form the content of Form 34C, are cooked. You cannot have both of them in the same document. And this court should not allow that document to stand at all. And the conflicting figures, and those conflicting figures for valid votes cast of 14,213,137, and the other one is the one when you add the values of the individual candidates, the 4 candidates, you get 14,213,027, is evidence that the results were worked backwards to achieve a desired or predetermined outcome. Therefore, the declared percentages for the 4 candidates, no, the votes attributed to the 4 candidates and the declared and the percentages attributed to them is all fiction. Now, I go to address the question of whether you can achieve, if assuming that what in the totality of the announcements made by the chairman, any of the candidates realized 50% plus 1 vote.
Just checking on the time.
Yes. There's no display for the time, unfortunately.
According to mine, time is over. If you could just finish your slides.
Okay, thank you.
Because they seem to have lost theirs.
Okay, so a further analysis of Form 34C on voter turnout, the chairman announced, and that issue has not been retracted at the close of voting. He was answering a particular question, and a journalist asked him, as matters stand now, what is the national voter turnout? And he said, oh, that one, I can deal with it. And he said, as at the time he was announcing, it was 65.4%. And according to what the KIMS kits had reported. And he expected that value to go up when all the KIMS kits had reported and the manual had been included in it. So when you calculate that against the total voter register, the national voter register of 22,120,458 votes, you get that the voter turnout as at that time was 14,466,799 votes. The next slide. So from Form 34, the tallies are ascribed in Form 34. You get, when you factor in the rejected votes, you get a total value of 14 million.
will never engage or even consider participating in such kind of petty business.
Petty business? Then why are you asking?
Forget I even asked.
You people, you don't know what is going on out there.
What's wrong? What's going on?
Bosira has gone Huwashi.
Huh?
He has gone Banana Garizi.
How dare you?
How dare me what?
How can you compare my executive business with that of a petty cow's business?
Like seriously, Atito, where do you think you're going?
I'm going to save the world.
Save the world from what?
From drought and starvation, of course, from Bosire. Doka.
You kill voters and you include new voters. So Raila gets 48.372118662. The next page, Wahiga would get 31,987, which would translate to 0.222856771%. Wajakoya at 61,969 becomes 0.4317447. And so now there are these other votes, the 140,000 votes, 140,138 votes. Since those votes were not, we don't know how the voters gave them to the candidates. We cannot randomly allocate them to any candidates. So they become the fifth variable here. Those ones amount to 0.976356086%. In the scenario, no candidate acquires 50% plus one vote that is required under Article 138.4, 138 Clause 4, Paragraph A. And so, with those few remarks, I pray that the Honorable Court allows the petition and the other petitions, and then...
My Lord, I had intended to make the prayers in lieu of the jurisprudential weight of the mundane questions that I would want this court to
Sorry, Senior Counsel. Can Mr. Omtatah confirm? I'm trying to go through the record. This PowerPoint presentation you just made, is it part of your pleadings?
Yeah, it's part of my pleadings in the law.
Word for word?
Yes, word for word. But I'm just cutting for purpose of my sake.
Okay, thank you.
I will do it.
Unless you are changing, that is not word for word.
No.
So if it's word for word, we don't need any other copy.
But of the most important is the father affidavit. Because when I did the first one, I did the petition, I did not have the information that came from... I did not have the information that came from Mr. Sunguli's affidavit. So I would request the court to pay particular attention to the father affidavit. That's why I had the benefit to compute the figures with the figures that the commission supplied. That's all, my lord.
Thank you.
Compelling are the figures that finally mathematics finds its way into invalidating.
So, General, you have no leave to address the court after time. Why don't you start from there?
Just to make prayers.
From where? From what time?
Leave from the
Start from there.
Just make prayers.
Senior Counsel, we agreed on the ground rules yesterday. Your time is up. In fact, his time went over because he was on the PowerPoint. We noted he went over by 6 minutes. So please, yes, if you have anything, you can reply when you have time to reply. Rejoinder. I will now invite counsel in petition number 6.